Here we go. It's day 3. Ooh, it's gonna be a great day. Let's go. All right, this one's a winner. We're geared up, ready to go. Well, today we did a whole lot of walking around. It was kind of a busy day. And I was up late last night, so I was kind of on the search all day today for a really good cup of coffee. And I think my wife and I were able to find a really good spot, but it took some searching. I mean, oh my gosh, did it ever. We were walking around so much, and we've done a lot of walking these past couple days. But hey, day 3, it's been fun. Well, day 3 has been an absolute jam-packed day. I'm so glad I found that awesome cup of coffee this morning, and I'm really ready to share what I've learned with you. So I've had a little bit of time to be able to think a little bit about all of the information that I received, not just day 3, but also day 2 and day 1. And I've been able to kind of synthesize it a little bit better. The most beneficial thing about going to this music conference over the course of these couple days has been the fact that I feel a renewed sense of energy. I feel like I am refreshed, that I am recharged. Like I've got some ideas, some things that I can implement, that I can take back to my rehearsals, my ensembles, and really make a difference, make an impact in the lives of the musicians. I'm humbled to be a part of their lives and a part of their musical journey. And so, if nothing else, I think this has been a great success because of that very simple reason. But to some more specific things that happened in day 3, one of those sessions was called Energizing Your Rehearsals. And really, it was all about what we do in a rehearsal as a director. All of us do the same thing, right? Isolation, you take something and you focus in on it. Repetition, you go over it and over again until it gets better, and then expansion. When that small isolated section gets better, you expand it a measure on either side, or maybe beyond that to the whole section or the whole phrase. You put it in context. So isolation, repetition, expansion. This energizing your rehearsal was really some ideas about how to get the repetition part of that 3-step process to be more fun. To kind of have some new ways of repeating things so that it seems more like a game and less like you're doing it for the purpose of repeating, right? Sometimes we can get into that rut, into that habit of, oh, that didn't sound good, and I'm just going to let you try it again, and we'll repeat it, and it didn't sound good again, but we're going to try it again, give it another shot, and that's really not a good way of running a rehearsal. And I've been guilty of that before, but after this session, this energizing session, I think I've got some tools to be able to do repetition in a way that doesn't seem monotonous, that continually seems new, and I think that's going to be awesome. You know, things like making a game out of it, sometimes being able to play the repeat game in small sections. You take the notes out of it and you just do rhythm. Maybe you take the rhythm out of it and you just do notes. There were some really cool things that the presenter talked about that I think are going to be really fun, and we'll see how they work. I guess I'll check back in with you after a couple weeks, and I'll let you know. But that was energizing your rehearsals. Another one that I went to was all about vibrato. So the vibration in the tone, it was really geared towards string players, but I was able to sit in there and learn some of the mechanics that go along with not only string vibrato, but really the mechanics of sound in general. Now, as part of my major in college, I never took, one of those acoustics classes, right? So My wife did, but I didn't, and so this was old to her. All the. Of course, I know some of the hertz, and I know some of the measurements, but some of the more specific ideas about amplitude and wavelength, I was very. It was very new to me, and so I feel like I learned a lot about the science behind sound from going to this session, and I also learned he did some research as part of his PhD program. In his study, he did work to see what sounds pleasing to the ear. So he surveyed a bunch of people and asked them, "Can you tell a difference between this and this?" He would play two different things. And then he would ask them, "Which one sounds better to you, this or this?" And he would ask you, "What are the differences between these two? And then can you match them up?" So he gave him a knob, and he could change pitch, or it could change, whatever. And it was really cool because he was able to share with us the findings from that study. One of those findings was that we can hear pitch really well. Go figure, right? And not just musicians, average ordinary people. They can pick up changes in pitch, even with relation to vibrato and the length of the vibrato. So what we would call the amplitude of the wavelength. So the variation, the wideness of the vibrato, people can pick that up, and they can tell the difference between a really wide and a really small vibrato. Normal people who don't have musical backgrounds at all, can usually pick it up. And he gave some figures between this and this measurement, but it was a pretty tight measurement. It wasn't crazy, and so that was pretty interesting. Go humans! Hey, we're doing something right. One of the other major findings from that study was answering a question that musicians have had. It's really more of a debate among us about vibrato and the nature of what humans hear. So there are three schools of thought. One thinks that pitch is heard with relation to vibrato. So here's the wave, right? Pitch is heard as the mean, the middle, the averaging of the upper and lower extremity of that wavelength. So that's what we think in tune is, and really that's what he was talking about is what do we think in tune, this idea. And so that's the first one, is that it's in the middle. Now another school of thought, this is number two, thinks that in tune, people perceive that as being the top of that wavelength. So when you're doing vibrato, that people pick up the top pitch as the in tune pitch. And so here's the wavelength. And so you're hearing that top area of the pitch. Does that make sense? And the third school of thought is the opposite, which is that humans naturally pick up the bottom of that wavelength. And that's what we consider to be in tune. Those are the main three schools of thought as far as what in tune is. So he set out to answer that question, and the findings were, hey, number one was correct. At least from a purely empirical, level, that what we perceive, what humans perceive as being in tune, is that we are able to average the wavelength, and whatever is in the center of that wavelength, as far as pitch is concerned, is what we perceive to be in tune. And he accomplished that by putting, one headphone that was playing a pitch, a straight pitch, and then one headphone that was playing a pitch with vibrato in it, and he asked the participants to line those up, and then he would switch them, and he would ask them to do it again. And so he tried it at different pitch levels with different people and big group, and those were the findings, that people tended to line that pitch center with the median. It was pretty interesting to know that. At least he answered my question, because I've had that question before. Now, why is this important? It's important because sometimes, especially singers, like to use vibrato as a means of disguising pitch. So sometimes they're sharp and sometimes they're flat. Well, sometimes they also use these other arguments. Oh, well, people hear on the top side of that wavelength anyway, so I'm actually in tune. Or the opposite, which they're actually singing flat, but they're using that argument that really everyone hears in tune as being the bottom side of this wavelength. So when I'm vibratoing and this is the actual pitch, it's fine. I'm doing okay. Or actually, I think those are opposite, right? Because if you're singing flat, then it's the top vibe thing. Am I crazy here? I don't know. Anyway, the important thing is he was able to answer that question, and now when I have singers that talk to me that want to go technical and they want to go, well, you know, humans really hear in tune this way. And I can go, well, here's a study that you might want to read. I had to go through that same kind of realization in my own studies. My voice teacher back in undergrad liked to talk about that. Sometimes we would take the vibrato out of things, and we would sing things straight, and it would be I was consistently singing on the flat side of the pitch, and so that was my tendency. Some people sing sharp, but I had to really realize that I was using vibrato to disguise my intonation issue. And so taking vibrato out of it allowed me to hear what the actual pitch was. I could raise it a little bit, and then we could add the vibrato back in it and go above and below the actual in-tune pitch for the aural perception of being actually in tune. So there was that. It was nice. It was nice to go to that session. And like I said, really what I got out of that this whole thing was just this renewed sense of encouragement, of energy, and that's pretty much invaluable. That's really neat to be able to every once in a while recharge and feel rejuvenated. So I was also able to do some exploring. Day 3 was a little strange in that way. Even though I caught some really good sessions like the 2 that I just talked about, I was also able to go see some really cool stuff. And I was able to go check out areas of the convention center that were pretty much abandoned, like this. Check this out. I found this spooky looking bridge thing. There's probably, I don't know, 10,000 people at this convention, probably more. And for some reason, this creepy bridge in the middle of the convention center is completely empty, and there is nobody here. It is so weird. And I was also able to do fun things like what we talked about earlier, which is go find a really good cup of coffee, which I think I did, and also hang out with some buddies and along the way, as well as my wife. And so, all in all, a good trip. I'm happy that we did it. And of course, I can't wait for next year, 2019 TMEA in San Antonio. It's going to be a blast. Well, this is it for this 3-part vlogging series about my reflections on what happened at TMEA 2018. And so if you like this content, maybe I'll try and do more content like this. But usually I do how-to videos and tutorials about music and ministry and how to grow in both. So if you like that kind of stuff, please subscribe to this channel, and considering hitting that like button on this video and the other 2 videos, part 1 and part 2, and let us know in the comments below what your reflections for your conferences that you go to. I know some of you watching right now went to TMEA. I'd love to hear what you took away from this conference, and maybe what you've taken away from previous conferences. How is it compared? I'd be curious to know. Anyway, this is Jared, and it's time for me to take some time and rest a little after a long, good, but hard week. And I hope that you feel rested, rejuvenated, and ready for this Lenten season. And I will see you next time. Go in peace.